every Iron Maiden fan knows that one song the band has never played live.
Alexander the Great.
And of course this year, with Iron Maiden's The Future Past tour, this is hopefully about to change. Although we might get something like this.
We can't let them take anymore. Alexander the Great.
At the same time, there are many songs in the Iron Maiden repertoire which the band has absolutely ignored throughout the years.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And if, in case of some of the tracks, it is totally understandable, the others remain a hidden gem of the Iron Maiden's career.
It's just outrageous.
And since none of the articles on the matter from all the well-respected magazines for some reason were not able to get that list right, let's take a look at all of them. Here you go. Very quick, before we start, as always, guys, please do not hesitate to comment on anything you hear or see in this video, and especially if you disagree with me, because the whole point of our Up the Irons series is, of course, to start a conversation. But alright, let's do it. When it comes to the first two records, almost every song from those albums has been played at least at some point in their career. And this, of course, is very much understandable, given the fact that Iron Maiden were formed all the way back in 1975, and their self-titled record and Killers were released in 1980 and 1981 respectively. And that gave Iron Maiden 7 years, during which they remained extremely active in terms of playing live, yet at the same time simply did not have that many songs in their repertoire. And thus every song from the band's self-titled debut record has been played live, including the B-sides, and only one song from Killers remained completely ignored until today. Yes, one. Now, most of the band's fans will tell you that Iron Maiden have never played their instrumental piece Ides of March live. And that is almost correct, as when it was used as an intro piece on their tour in 2004 and 2005, that in fact was just a tape recording of the track. They would be absolutely right on that. But on October 5th, in 1979, long before Killers was released, Iron Maiden already had an idea of using Ides of March as an intro for their concert. But there was a slight problem. This song hasn't been recorded yet.
Because of the budgets that we had?
And so on one occasion on that day, during their performance at Ruskin Arms, Iron Maiden actually played Ides of March live, then going into a very early and slow version of Wrathchild. By the way, if you would like to check out the earliest and the most weird versions of what Killers and Iron Maiden were supposed to sound like, check out the episode on the evolution of its sound, the links to which you can find somewhere in the description to this video. And also please consider checking out my Patreon page for more super nerdy metal content. But anyways, that means that the only song that Iron Maiden has never played from the first two albums would be the track Prodigal Son, which I totally get. And not because it's a bad song, but because at that point heavy metal was competing with punk rock, and thus most bands on their live shows went for much shorter tracks. And Prodigal Son being over 6 minutes in running time, which by then was an extremely long song for Iron Maiden, yeah, little do they know. Definitely was an overstretch for a live show. And if many did include a longer piece, they usually would go for Phantom of the Opera, since they considered it a much stronger track. In 1982, Iron Maiden released their breakthrough record Number of the Beast, possibly the only album which absolutely everyone, even non-metalheads, can name when they talk about Iron Maiden. And so one would assume that every song from this record would have been played live at least once in their career. Yet this is not the case. Even more, Number of the Beast is actually the only Iron Maiden album, the opening track from which, Invaders, has never been played live. And of course it also features another absolutely ignored song, which in fact might be the most hated track in the entire Iron Maiden repertoire. And not really by the fans, but rather by the band. Gangland. It is no secret that Steve Harris has always considered including Gangland on Number of the Beast to be a mistake, and that according to him the track Total Eclipse should have made it on the album originally. And actually, that has been the case on most reissues, including the latest one. But the thing is, I don't actually consider Gangland to be the weakest song from the early Iron Maiden era, as it does in fact has some rather interesting passages, and I would absolutely love to explore the Gangland vs Total Eclipse rivalry in one of the future videos. So if you think that a special episode on that matter would be of interest for you, please let me know in the comments. On their fourth studio album, Peace of Mind, Iron Maiden continued the tradition of ignoring two songs from the record. Those being Sun and Steel, which in my opinion is a great track, and I am super happy that it at least got recognition in the form of a tasty beverage. And the song Quest for Fire. The choice which I, to be honest with you, totally understand. But I would absolutely love to see it performed on stage. Just can you imagine Eddie in one of those inflatable dinosaur costumes and Bruce Dickinson running around the stage looking like that? And by the way, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, check out the Peace of Mind episode on the channel. Well, I'm promoting quite a lot of episodes in this one, so I promise you that was the last one. Shame! When talking about Powerslave, most of the media outlets out there will tell you that the band hasn't played 3 songs from that record. But that is absolutely not true.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
When in 1984, Iron Maiden embarked on their massive World Slavery Tour, in the beginning of it they also played some of the most important concerts in the rock and roll history. First of all, being the first major heavy metal band to go with shows behind the Iron Curtain, and secondly with those 2 shows in Poland being the only time Iron Maiden ever played back in the Village Live. And so the only surprise 2 songs from this record, which Iron Maiden actually has never played, are Flash of the Blade and The Duelists, which I believe is a crime against humanity.
Yes, it's true.
Now, we've finally come to the most interesting part of the video, where everything we say here might finally change in just a couple of months. So by the way, if you are watching this video after the Future Past tour has begun, please tell me in the comments that this video did not age well.
Just like that.
But when it comes to the most overlooked 1980s album by the band, Iron Maiden's Somewhere in Time, we of course again have 2 songs, Alexander the Great and Deja Vu, which the band has absolutely ignored throughout the years, despite us, the fans, begging the boys to play it live.
Will you play Alexander the Great? Will this summer finally hear Alexander the Great? Are you looking forward to finally performing Alexander the Great?
And so this year, when the band finally goes on their The Future Past tour, this of course might change even more. During his spoken word tour, Bruce Dickinson almost officially confirmed that the band will finally play at least Alexander the Great live on this tour, which of course is great news, which will finally put an end to all the memes circulating in the Iron Maiden community, but might not really be enough for me. In addition to Alexander the Great and Deja Vu, there is also this one more song from Somewhere in Time, which Iron Maiden sadly only played once on September 10th in 1986 in Belgrade. The Loneliness of a Long Distance Runner. And in my opinion, it is one of those hidden gems in the Iron Maiden catalog, which definitely deserves much more praise and attention than it currently has. Closing the 1980s, Iron Maiden released one of their strongest and the most complex records of the decade. A record on which, in my opinion, there are no misplaced tracks, with each of them adding something unique to the mix, thus creating this complex image of an almost a concept record. And even though Seventh Son of a Seventh Son was received extremely well by most Iron Maiden fans, still, not every song has made it to a setlist of an Iron Maiden show, even up until today. One of them is the song The Prophecy, which, to be honest with you, I totally get. Not because it is a weak song, but because it would be rather hard to incorporate it into a setlist of an Iron Maiden show organically. And the only way to incorporate it naturally would possibly be among the other Seventh Son of the Seventh Son songs. So I guess since both the original and the retrospective tours are over, we might actually never hear it live.
Why, God, why?
And also a closing track, Only the Good Die Young, which, I'll be honest with you, is rather surprising, because it actually has every element of a song Iron Maiden had played previously on their tours. Having both the galloping riff and a very catchy chorus, and at the same time not being too long, which I guess was kind of an indicator of an end of a first era of Iron Maiden. If we take a closer look, this song is actually neither too short and right in your face, nor is it a long and gorgeous opus, which actually makes it a perfectly balanced Iron Maiden song.
Exactly.
And the truth is that such songs, which neither fully belong to the early punky era of Iron Maiden, nor to the later, more complex one, actually almost completely disappeared from an Iron Maiden setlist from the 1990 onwards. But I actually do have a feeling, or rather a hope, that since the band has recently started exploring their mostly forgotten parts of the catalog, we might actually hear this track live at some point in the future.
So until the next time, have a good sin.
And thus ends the classic 1980s era of Iron Maiden, and thus would be a perfect time to draw some conclusions and patterns which appear on Iron Maiden records, especially since it will be extremely hard to do that later on, and you will see what I'm talking about. Every Iron Maiden album so far had a great representation during their live appearances, with most classic records, including the overlooked Somewhere in Time, missing only 2 songs to be played live by the band. An interesting pattern is also the fact that most of the times, those 2 songs would be played somewhere around the third quarter of the record, which most likely means that by the time Iron Maiden were ready to release an album, the band already kinda consider them to be their least favorite ones, and so they would always strategically place them in the middle of the second disc, thus kinda building this momentum up until the middle of the album, then allowing themselves for a slight slip, and then ending the record with a bang. And the second point is that up until right now we only have one record which has been represented in its entirety on an Iron Maiden live show. But just running a little bit ahead of myself, there will be a second one in the Iron Maiden discography. And you kinda have to wait until the end of the video to find out which one, or if you already know, then please just continue watching because it really means a lot to me.
Yeah, me too.
Starting with No Prayer for the Dying, which you most likely know by a different artwork, Iron Maiden's pattern started to break, with more and more songs from each record never being included in the setlist, which is kind of understandable, since by then Iron Maiden already had a very strong classic back catalog, which they kinda have to play at a show. And so the 3 songs from No Prayer for the Dying, which you and I have never heard live, would be Fate's Warning, Run Silent, Run Deep, and... Yes, I blurred this just as a reminder for you guys that the war in Ukraine is still going on and there are people dying here every day. And so guys, I just wanted to thank you all and say that it means the world to us, the support of the free people of the world. And guys, please continue supporting us in any way you possibly can. But nevertheless, I actually don't think that we will ever hear either of those songs live at some point in the future, because A, looking at the statistics, Iron Maiden actually performed only 1 song from this record after Bruce Dickinson's return to the band, and B, well, just let's be honest here, there are some much stronger tracks that Iron Maiden have never played live than those 3. Fear of the Dark became a breaking point in an Iron Maiden career, and not only because of the fact that Bruce Dickinson left after this record,
I'm leaving you.
but also because it was the first time that the majority of the songs from this record were actually never performed live. And thus, 7 out of 12 songs, Fear is the Key, Childhood's End, The Fugitive, Chains of Misery, The Apparition, Judas Be My Guide, and Weekend Warrior were never performed by the band on stage. Which I'll be honest with you, I am kind of okay with listening to most of them just through my earphones, but I think it's an absolute shame that we never got to hear Judas Be My Guide live. Only first Maiden album with Blaze Bayley on vocals, 4 songs, most of which fall into that criteria of not punky and not long enough, have never been played live. Those being Judgment of Heaven, Look for the Truth, 2 AM, and the closing track, The Unbeliever, which I believe hasn't been played live not really because it is a weak track, but rather because it was never meant to be performed on stage. But interestingly enough, almost every song from the record, which gets so much criticism by Iron Maiden fans, and I'm of course talking about Virtual 11, has been played live, with the only exception of the song Como Estáis Amigos. And yes, not even in Spain. And I said it before and I'm not ashamed to say it again. I absolutely love both albums released with Blaze Bayley on vocals. And while neither of them, and especially not the latter one, are on top of my list of favorite Iron Maiden albums, they are, in my opinion, significantly stronger than, let's say, No Prayer for the Dying.
What is real? Future real.
The band's Brave New World was supposed to be the album that symbolized the return of the true form of Iron Maiden. And thus it is only ironically that the band once again has not performed 2 songs from that record.
We are blood brothers!
And while I honestly don't really care too much about the Nomad being played live, I think the thin line between love and hate would have sounded absolutely epic on stage.
So I will
By the time Maiden released Dance of Death, they had such a strong back catalog that they only managed to play 6 out of 11 songs from that record live. Thus, Montsegur, Gates of Tomorrow, New Frontier, Face in the Sand, and Age of Innocence never have been heard by a crowd at an Iron Maiden show. And here's the thing, I actually have a very strong personal emotional connection to this record. And while with my head, I totally understand that Dance of Death is definitely not the strongest record in the Iron Maiden discography, I personally would actually trade most of the classic songs, you know, the ones which you kind of hear at almost every Iron Maiden show, just to be able to hear Face in the Sand or Montsegur live. And if that is not possible, at least give more credit to the songs which have already been performed on stage. In 2006, something absolutely extraordinary happened in the world of this band, for Iron Maiden have finally released an album, the songs from which for the very first time since their debut record have all been performed on stage at some point in their career. Something that has never happened afterwards, for let's say only 5 out of 10 songs from the Final Frontier have been performed, and 4 songs from the Book of Souls have never been heard live. And by the way, while I totally understand why such songs as When the River Runs Deep, Shadows of the Valley, or The Man of Sorrows haven't been performed, I honestly don't understand why, especially after the band has started playing all those super long songs on stage. But why did the band never perform Empire of the Clouds live? Cause I mean, come on, that track is a freaking masterpiece. And in such way we'll of course come to the latest studio album by Iron Maiden, Senjutsu. Only 3 songs from which of course have been played so far, but once again, this thing is definitely about to change this year. For as we discussed several times on previous episodes, most likely at least 5 songs from Senjutsu will be played on this The Future Past tour. And while I promise there will be many more episodes regarding this tour as we come closer to the start date, including some speculations on which songs we might hear live and then comparing to what we actually heard live, just running a little bit ahead of myself, I'd like to say that although most likely not possible, but I would absolutely love to hear Hell on Earth on this tour. But anyways, which songs which the band has never played live do you long to hear Iron Maiden perform on stage? please let us know in the comments. And also whether you think we should do more song-specific episodes on our Up the Irons series.
Write that down, write that down!
Thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and I would like to give a special shout out to all my patrons and everyone who's been supporting me, throughout these months. Please do know that this amazing metal community that we're building together means the world to me. We will prevail. Slava Ukraini!